Well, hello, Theresa. How the devil are you?
Do you know, I'm really good and I'm so excited to be back.
Yes. So even though we couldn't believe we were doing series one, and then we couldn't believe we were doing series two, we're now launched straight into series three. So beginning of a new year, and a new series. So maybe to share what we're going to be talking about, because we do have a new theme. Last series we were talking about new, and the different angles from that point of view. We had loads of guests, which was amazing. We're back to two coaches chatting about what they love,
Look, it says it up here.
and it does say it up there. And this time, in this series, we're going to be talking about the inner work of leadership. So there's a few different things that we'll be talking about during the season, during the series, if I can get my words out.
Quick, more
Um,
coffee.
I know exactly. There's a cup of tea I've nearly spilt three times today, so maybe that's a sign of it wasn't a great start to the morning. But we're going to be talking about a number of different angles. I'll let you introduce the one from today, but in the future, just to give a little teaser, we're going to be thinking about the imposter syndrome. The word I don't particularly like, but am I good enough? What my style of leadership is? Where are my boundaries, values, and also just putting it all together in how do you become the leader that you want to be? So lots to come in the series. But tell me, what about today's episode?
Oh, well, today we're going to start right at the beginning, and it's about who am I now? So you will often be promoted from being a colleague into a leadership role, and all of a sudden, that identity that you had has changed, and with that comes all sorts of different challenges, exciting ones, a bit scary ones. And so we're going to open the box and have a bit of an explore in there, share some experiences of what has come up when we've worked with our clients, but also our own personal experiences, because you've got to remember that you and I have had a fantastic career that has gone from a graduate all the way up to senior leadership, and now we like to share those experiences. So I'm going to jump straight in, Philippa, and please tell me about your first experiences of becoming, well, was it a people manager or a people leader?
It was definitely manager to start with, I would say. And I would say my first experience, I was like, this will be great and easy. And I love people and people love me, so it's going to be fine. But I was promoted within the team. And when I look back now, go, God, that is so hard to do because you're there as an individual contributor and then you're put in and now you're the manager. And I think the whole thing could have been sort of managed better. Of didn't set new expectations really clearly with myself, with the team. Um, I tend to learn quite a lot from role modeling. I didn't have a fantastic manager at the time. I won't mention any names. So it meant I didn't really have really good leadership role modeling that I was able to follow. It was also interesting with I sort of expected it to be, I've got motivated, knowledgeable, team members who have exactly the right balance of ideas and implementation. And it was, oh my God, I really have to work really hard to get this team to actually form, gel, and deliver. So it was so much more challenging than I was expecting. And, I did get support with, leadership training, but it's only when you really start to put into practice and go, I'm not going to do things necessarily by this playlist. I was working out who I wanted to be,
Mm.
which then switched me more into a leader, which was in future roles, I would say as well. So, first role, definitely managing, definitely more challenging than I expected. Lots of the things we'll talk about in future episodes about a bit of imposter syndrome as well. And that big switch from individual contributor into actually not being the person with all of the answers for their specialism, but looking to be a bit more general and drawing on the talents, the skills, the knowledge from those in the team, without it all ending back up going, and I need to solve everything. So that was my experience, which obviously sounds like it was a big challenge. I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll get on to some of the successes that came later, but what's your thoughts? Because I don't know from a personal experience or as well, because I know you're coaching managers, leaders at the moment as well. So what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I recently been coaching some young leaders in education that have gone from being the classroom teacher all of a sudden up onto the SLT. And it's really interesting to see it through their eyes because you do forget, when you've been in your career a long time, you do forget what that's like. And it's a real compliment to be promoted into a people manager role. And I think sometimes you don't realize that actually people management, people leadership is harder than the job.
Yeah.
Whatever your job is, you can do your job, you've proven you can do your job, and the next step is quite hard. And I
Mm.
think one of the hardest things, and certainly the conversations I've been having recently, is how do you do that step from working alongside your colleagues and probably your friends to being their boss?
Yeah.
And that's quite a difficult step. And especially if you're quite young, well, it's hard at any age, I think, but even when you're quite young, how do you then put those boundaries in place that are reasonable, but at the same time are not going to diminish the good working relationship that you've got with your colleagues, but you
Yeah.
you have to take a slightly different approach. And again, I think that's very much about the conversations that you have and being clear about the outcomes that you're looking for. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and that's hard because you've not had to do that before. And I have found that when I've been coaching these new young leaders, a lot of what we talk about is how to have the conversation. And that's where the value is added because we haven't had to have those conversations before in the work environment. And also, of course, when you first step up, everybody's excited because you're getting a pay rise. So let's take the pay rise, but actually, you do need to be very conscious of what you're stepping up into. And I think you touched upon something about you don't have to be the person that knows everything you in the team. Yes, it's great if you know a lot of the things, and you will have done because you're working your way up. But I listened to a great podcast not so long ago with Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, and he talked about when he was young and in his 20s and building his businesses, and he thought he had to be the expert at everything. And that
Yeah.
really slowed the growth of his teams and his businesses because he wasn't. And then if
Yeah.
you try and pretend that you are, people can see straight through that. The way to be a great leader as opposed to a manager is to lean on the experts, learn from them, and then coordinate it. And I think when we've been talking about this, you use the word be the orchestrator.
Yeah, it's conducting all the different
That's it, the
musical instruments to
conductor.
make this beautiful
Yes,
music
yeah.
together as a team. I think it's a nice analogy, which people can probably relate to. And I think on your point about the not being the expert, then one of the coaching books that I know that we both studied as we were doing our certification was Michael Bungay Stanier, and something that really resonated with me was tell less and ask more. So it's
Yes.
about you as a turning from manager to leader, also being the person who starts to coach a bit more. So
Mm.
it's not the directive, it's more of the non-directive sort of coaching and seeing what you can get your team to do before you leap in with do this, do this, do this, do this,
Mm.
which I think, particularly when you've been an individual contributor, you've got a lot of that knowledge and experience yourself, then there's a tendency to go, and I still need to prove my worth by being
Yeah.
able to say, this is how I got here because I know this stuff. But actually the gift to your team is to empower and to let them grow as individuals and develop as well, stretch them as far as you can before you then can give any extra mentoring advice that's needed. So that sounds good. So I mean, a few challenges, any successes that you would say as well, or any other challenges that you would add of that switch into being a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you just touched on it then. It's that empowerment piece, isn't it? That's, I think, when you really know that you're coming out of that constant management scenario and into leading the team. There's nothing better than empowering a team member to deliver something and then they deliver it, they grow. And it's like everybody rises at the same time. So,
Yeah.
the whole tide comes up and you all go up with it, which is just brilliant. And again, some of the conversations I've been having recently, it's just that light bulb moment of you seeing if you put the groundwork in with the team at whatever level they're at, then the success on the other side of it is great. And yeah, there'll be some trial and errors, of course there will be. And you have to anticipate that. And one of the things that I always talk about is what is good enough. So when you
Mm.
sort of have a think about, right, we're here, we've got to get to here, but actually here would be good enough. So constantly strive, but know where your good enough position is, because then you will achieve what you need to achieve. And it's about having that vision as a leader, and
Yeah.
being able to see everybody coming up as at the same time. And I know we often talk about feedback, don't we, Philippa? And I know you do quite a bit of work with your clients on that. So let's just have a bit more of an explore around the feedback piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and is in my mind also some of the switch that I felt, and through coaching, I also think is then fairly important. There's two things which I think switch you from a manager, or maybe it's more of a rather than a switch, then it's actually a bit more of a constant from one to the other, is feedback. So being able to give feedback and being able to receive feedback.
Yes.
And then the other areas around sort of your own emotional intelligence. I think
Mm.
that really is the difference between managing and then really leading and inspiring. So on the feedback piece, you're right. Then I think there's an element of what's the right way to give feedback. And anyone who's is aware of Kim Scott and radical candor, I love it. And it's about trying to get that balance right between caring personally and challenging directly.
Mm.
So not being I care so much, I'm not going to give you anything that you can actually learn from. I'm just going to be nice to you all the time. It doesn't help someone grow. And if you challenge too directly with no, it's because I care about you developing
Mm.
as a person,
Mm.
then it can come across as really aggressive. It can be obnoxious, and it can switch people off. But you need to get that right balance of the reason why you're giving feedback is because you really are invested in the person that you're
Yeah.
giving feedback to, and you can see that their potential is there and that you're trying to help them to get there. Similar to coaching as well, I would say as well, about trying to give some of that core challenge. So I think the feedback for you as a leader to team members is really valuable, and you need to exercise the muscle. So I know when we've talked before, we've said you can't just leap into the half marathon, can you, Theresa? You
No,
need to do
no,
some training.
no. A
You
lot
need
of
to do some
training.
training, and you need to exercise the muscle. And then that means you can do as many half marathons as you want, as long as you're then consistently doing it. So I think that's a bit about the sort of feedback when you're giving it to team
Mm.
members, but there's also about the receiving feedback yourself. So I've used 360-degree feedback fairly extensively before, in as I was working in the corporate world, but also from a coaching perspective. And I think it's an amazing tool. First of all, it affirms you as a leader, because you can
Mm.
sometimes get some feedback which is really positive that can get rid and dismiss that imposter syndrome. But you can also get those nuggets, which is, oh, I didn't realise that was the way I was perceived. I know the way that I act and I'm conscious about it,
Mm.
but it's not the response that I was expecting. So that those nuggets of feedback are really valuable to help your own self-awareness and development, which leads to my other area of the switching from manager to leader, which is about the emotional intelligence piece.
Yeah.
It's not just the soft stuff that people talk about. You are talking about regulating your emotion. So not, having some impulse control when you're faced with certain
Mm.
situations, having empathy, having self-awareness, in order to respond to things consistently, which gives a safer space for your team to operate in. So if
Mm.
you're always doing this, your team doesn't know quite which person's going to turn up that day.
Yeah,
Whereas if
absolutely.
you're at least, you're going to have some, ups and downs, but it's trying to regulate that. So your team goes, I operate in this space and that's okay. And
Mm.
sometimes I'm going to get a tone which means, "Ooh, we need to button up a bit," but it's not an extreme. So it's just trying to
Yeah.
make sure you temper that. So to me, those two things about the feedback, giving feedback, receiving feedback, and honing a bit about your own emotional intelligence, are what really makes you into a great leader, not just a people manager.
Do you know, as you were talking then, it's really interesting. Something came to me. It's about that safe space, which
Yeah,
we're all about a safe
yeah,
space. But it's where you allow your team to grow, but be challenged, explore the difficult areas. And I was sat in a cafe the other day looking out to sea, and there was a couple who were probably in their late 60s, early 70s, a married couple, and they were having a debate about stocks and shares. And she was definitely on a different page to him. And I felt a bit uncomfortable in the conversation, and I was just eavesdropping. Um, and the way that they were and I thought, oh, this is going to blow up. They're gonna leave, and they're going to be in, they're going to have a big Barney here, a marital Barney. And actually, they brought the conversation right round, and it was ended in such a great place where they'd been both allowed to explore their differences of opinion. They'd listened and heard each other, agreed that they don't agree, but were very acknowledging of each other's different viewpoint,
yeah,
and then they could move on. And I
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
gosh, I wish I had been able to record that as a learning tool, that it's you can be in those uncomfortable conversations, but it still be safe.
Yes, exactly. And obviously if you say it's a married couple in their 60s, 70s, the likelihood is they've had a fairly long relationship, they know where each other stand, they're not thinking as soon as I say this, they're gonna walk out the door.
Yeah,
Then it is a
yeah.
case of we can challenge each other, and that's
Mm,
okay.
mm,
And accepting that you can disagree sometimes,
absolutely.
as well, and then just working out, what's the compromise or which way do we lean. So yeah, yeah. If and thinking about it as well, because if you look back on your experience, Trader, as that sort of people manager or leader, have you got any things that, as you look retrospectively, that you would give yourself as advice as now looking back on almost your younger self?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Crikey. First of all, my younger self was absolutely dazzled by the pay rise and the flashy company car. Be cautious that you don't get dazzled by the flashy lights. But actually, I think I would say to myself now, well, I know I would say to myself is it's all about trust. Trust the process. Trust the person that has seen those things in you that they believe you can do this role. Yes, you might need a bit of further help and support. You're not going to go in there and be able to do the job. And I remember when I interviewed once for a senior role, and I was thinking, I can't do this. I know I can't do this. But the person that took me on, but who then became my manager, said, I know you have got the values, the willpower, and the enthusiasm to do the role. You just don't have the knowledge and the skills on the product. I can teach you that, but you come to this role with all the bits I can't teach you. And I had to trust in him that he knew how to bring me on. And therefore, trust in the fact that you've been given the opportunity and also trust in yourself because that I think will allow you to get into action and it will allow you to be on the journey to developing your leadership style and to really be what other people can see in you and what you can do, which I think will just be phenomenal. And
Yeah.
it's always great when you feel empowered in yourself and to do that. And
Mm.
also, if anybody that listens to Sarah Davis, who's all over everything at the moment, whether it be podcasts on the television, GMTV, quiz shows, a Dragon's Den extraordinaire, she very much talks about that to young people entering into the workforce. So she's very much worth a listen. So, as always, when we come to the end of our podcast, we always chat about what has been the message. So, I'm going to ask you that question today, Philippa.
Oh,
When we talk about the inner work of a leader and who am I now, which is what we've been talking about today, what would you say is sort of one of the key messages for today?
yeah, there's so much in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think it sort of encapsulates it a bit around you're put into that position of leadership usually for your potential rather than your perfection now. You need to exercise the muscles, which is building that experience in order to be able to deliver as a really good, excellent leader. And that is about not just the title that you're given and going, got the title, that's it, I'm done. It's about trusting yourself and also earning the trust of your
Mm.
team,
Yes.
which is the way that you then deliver as a great leader. So I would say that that's our message from today.
Amazing. And what a great message that is. So that's it. We're at the end of series three, episode one. That's just flown by. I can't believe it. And next time when we come together, we're going to be talking about, am I good enough? This is going to be a big one. And I know Philippa hates the phrase imposter syndrome, but it's the one that most of our listeners will
It's
recognize.
recognizable. I'm
Yeah.
okay with the fact that it's recognizable, but I'll explain a bit more in the next episode as to where my mindset goes with it.
Fabulous. Okay, well, it's been fabulous as always. Always love our chats, and I look forward to seeing you for episode two.
All right, see you later.